Welcome to the Gift of Truth and SA Jural's Common Law Education Sessions. We appreciate you for joining us as we come together, laying the foundations for sovereignty, self-governance, and abundance. The date today is Monday, the 4th of March, 2024, and the topic being discussed is All the World is a Trust. Gratitude always to our wonderful educator, Karen, for sharing your knowledge and the inspiration for these sessions. Before we begin, we will read in our disclaimer. As we step into living in private as men and women in the land jurisdiction, we comprehend that there should be no disclaimer, as each and every interpretation and overstanding of anything and everything that we as living souls experience is unique. The responsibility is our own as to how we use educational material such as this. Everyone reading these pages, watching this video, or listening to the audio has enough wisdom to follow their own course. The choice is yours and yours alone. Without any further delay, we are going to hand across the microphone to Karen, and we ask everybody to please keep your microphones on mute and your cameras switched off. Karen, are you ready for me to put the document up for the lesson this evening?
I am. Thanks so much. Thanks for everything and greetings, everybody. Yeah, so we're going to start off with probably the most important subject so far, or the whole world runs under trusts. So it's a very, very important lesson, this. And we'll just keep continuing on with trusts because you'll start seeing the debtor, the creditor, the whole concept is pretty much a diversion from the actual truth, which means the world is actually a trust. You look at the Old Testament and the New Testament, it's a new trust. It's the first trust, and then the second trust is the New Testament. It's a follow through. It's actually a mirror. So the world is a trust. As a thing is bound, so it is unbound. So are you the donor, the beneficiary, or the trustee? Learn how to express your trust, your name. Your estate trust is your name, and demolish the identity theft. Emancipate. Declare your living status in this prepaid system in trust. Your name is a business trust. Money is created in trust. Bills of exchange is a trust process disguised as debtor creditor. Courts function under trusts with you as bonded slaves. That's the bottom line. It's just as basic and point for point as that you can get. That's the situation you're in. So point for point, we'll just undo ourselves as we can, as we go along. So here's your image of your public and the private trust. We've gone through this quite a lot, but we're going to run through it again because your basic structure, as you know, the donor, the one who sets up the trust and puts the assets, or the one silver coin, which is your express trust. Please don't make the mistake of doing anything other than your donation has to exceed 100 Rand, and it's got to be either in silver or gold. I recommend silver because gold is under government control. And as we know, in the Depression of 1930, what they did to create the collapse is they made everyone hand the gold in. So keep to silver. So there's your grantor, the donor, the one who sets up the trust. Generally for the beneficiaries, remembering you yourself can be a beneficiary as well. So the grantor is the individual who establishes the trust and decides what assets go into it. With our common law express trust, just stick to a silver or gold. If you do have land, that can be put into there if you're in the process of purchasing. Then you've got the trustee. They're the administrators of the trust. They hold all the legal titles, and the beneficiaries own the beneficial titles. So the trustee are the individuals or institution that manages the trust assets, and then the beneficiaries are the people or entities that will benefit from all the trust assets. And as we know, you can set up a trust for an old woman and delinquent child. Then you have a special trust, and you basically keep it as a trust fund, and you run your whole life through these trusts, and as you go along, you'll see why. So trusts are governed by the law of equity. It's not generally equity, it's equitable interests. So your interest as the beneficiary in the trust is the equitable interest, which is all what you gain out of the asset. Lifestyle, values, different things. So the intro message to governments and all crown agents: if you kill or kidnap one of our sons or daughters, and especially if you do this for money, you're finished. That's our law, that's our custom, plainly published and under enforcement. Everyone needs to be aware that South Africans do exist, and we are not operating as humans or slaves. We are not adopting any foreign citizenship obligations. We are not bound by any unconscionable contracts, nor are we fictionalized by someone else's pen. In truth, South Africans have the absolute right to defend ourselves and our families and our neighbors and our property interests against any foreign power, including any foreign corporation and corporation personnel or their employees. As a thing is bound, we are bound through this whole fictional system, so it has to be unbound. The way you walk in through somewhere, you have to reverse and walk out the same way. Even though it's all fraud, you still have to operate in the system, so you have to have your paperwork changed so that government knows you're operating under a different status. So unbind yourself with a mirror trust. That's a total reversal. So the mirror, you get the one trust that's registered at the master's office, and then you've got the mirror trust, which is your private trust. You don't need a mirror trust if you don't need a bank account for your trust. But if you want to set up a bank account, you've got to get it in at the master's office, and then you set up a private trust, which is the mirror trust. We're going to go into that later on down the line. So if you want to change the order of something, you invert it, you upside down it. 1, 2, 3 becomes 3, 2, 1. The slave becomes the master. Money is worth less than nothing. Doctors promote disease for their own profit. Lawyers subvert justice for the same reasons. The head of the Christian church converts to Satanism in an effort to avoid his obligations under ecclesiastical laws, the Equity and New Testament laws. The King of England comes out of the closet and reveals his dependency on the Pope and Rome, though that has been his condition and the condition of all his ancestors for over 800 years. The literal order of things is thrown to the wolves. This happens every 26,000 years, and each time the world that men have created and imposed upon the earth is destroyed, and a new age under different powers begins. Notice what is said about this. The world will be destroyed, but the true God will bring to ruin those who are ruining the earth and make all things new. Take note of what Yeshua told you. My kingdom is not of this age. So we're going into the new age. That's what the new age is. It's the New Testament according to Western. You'll find it through most religions. But obviously the Bible and the Western structure that's controlling the world is of great importance because all the remedies are in it. What is different this time is that we finally remembered our lessons. So we do not need to repeat anything. The so-called eternal return is ended. There will be no once and future king. No more wheels of karma. The interstice between worlds has been shut down. The energetic grid of the earth, distorted for thousands of years, is being restored. The millstones have been prepared, and those who have harmed our children will be drowned in the depths of sea made of fire. They will be isolated and cast out forever. It's over, sons and daughters. We passed linear algebra and calculus and a whole lot more. We learned to self-govern, and on top of our conscience, we grew a nonsense censor, so that all the guile and wiles and lies and fear-mongering and omissions and deliberate confusions coming from all the cues are dissected and obvious before us. Cues as in questions. Q is the designated code for the late queen, the theft, the schematics, the scheme, known as quantitative easing, QE2, and the Kabbalah. Only spelled as it sometimes is, like this, with a Q, the Kabbalah. So quantitative easing, when you get to understand it, is how this whole system of fraud works. We've gone through, there's a nice diagram here, that the handkerchief diagrams are all brilliant. It shows and explains to you how the Fed buys the bonds, and then the bond prices, and then the interest rates, and then cheaper to borrow to invest. But it's all there for you to take a look at and understand. So body, mind, and soul have been enslaved by these parasites, but now it comes to an end. The only surprise is that so many remembered and took a stand for life and have remained true to that, no matter what. To them is granted much honor, joy, and grace. Be happy, because we are not deceived, and we're not waiting for anyone to save us, and we're not mistaken a movie for our own lives. No, to us, life is as flat-footed as a peanut butter sandwich, and the new earth that is coming, it's here. It's upside down and backwards. It's beautiful and true and right, and it belongs to us. What we have described in our Zoom lessons thus far is the creation of the public trust interest in private property by a foreign government, an ownership interest which is used to pillage, plunder, coerce, and defraud the actual owners under color of law. What we have to deal with next in reference to the Roman Catholic Church is the creation of a private trust interest in private South African property by a foreign government known as Vatican City. The South African government claims a public interest in the abandoned South African estate, meaning you, this is your birth certificate now, you are property of government, using the mechanism of undisclosed and unconscionable registration of South African babies as chattel assets. The Vatican City operatives claim a private trust interest in the estates of purportedly dead South African babies that they consistently describe as stillborn fraternal twins. This is all while we're alive, folks. This twin, described by Pope Boniface VIII as a human creature, always arrives with a baby. Folks, this has literally been going on for a long time. This is true. It started out with a heartbeat, and shortly after delivery, it dies according to their paperwork. So they attach whatever name the parents gave to this baby and gave it a baptism while the heartbeat was still present, if possible, and then almost immediately after performed the last rites. And they set up an infant dissident estate in the name of the lost fraternal twin, which also happened to be the name of the surviving twin brother. So every baby that was born for years, they literally used to say it was a twin on paper. The one would be dead and the other one would be living. Now look at your birth certificates. The unabridged birth certificate is a corporate entity, a dead fiction, and your live birth certificate recognizes your live born certificate, recognizes that you were actually a living and a dead person at that moment of arriving on Earth. So you never knew about the South African citizen named after you because that was a totally unconscionable contract. So you never knew about his estate, his Schedule contracts with the Roman pontiff either. So the whole scheme was designed as a black box within a black box with deliberate misidentification and impersonation at the heart of it. At every step, Joe Average South African had been nailed down to suffer and slave for the obligations of all these foreign citizens named after him. All legal fictions that don't actually exist. It's a completely evil and vacuous system built on lies, paper, hot air, yet this system has continued to exist between the scenes ever since the First Crusades, when Roman Catholics lost their minds and actually believed that killing for Jesus made sense. So expert and pernicious are these identity thieves and human traffickers, so slickly efficient are their bill collectors. They put on a show in courtrooms to make it look like all this is official, and yet they are operating under color of law and conditions of deceit, and the characters they address aren't even real. It's all designed purely and simply to defraud the living people, to purloin or outright steal their assets and their credit for the benefit and use of third parties. These are, whether we like it or not, the practices of organized crime syndicates. And once again, the bar attorneys are smack dab in the center of it, playing the games and committing the personage necessary to defraud and steal the assets and the credit belonging to the living people. Now that this has become common knowledge, the corporate vermin responsible have tried once more desperately vile criminal gambits. First, they redefine us as a British territorial SA citizen. Next, they redefine the SA citizens as Roman Catholic-owned municipal corporations. And now they have tried to redefine everyone who got a COVID-19 injection as genetically modified organisms under patent and license to Microsoft Inc. We individually and collectively are owned all right, title, and interest in our names and our natural estates, all vested and physical interests in our assets. And we hold the unique survivorship interest in our named estates, our birth certificates, and country. Sorry, criminals, we have returned from the assumed dead. Okay, this is a nice little chart for the people who get the notes. Just to explain the two different worlds. I'm just going to go through it really fast because you can see the birth certificates is on the left-hand side. If you're standing holding the document, it's on the right-hand side. So you always put yourself on the right-hand side on your letters. You put your addresses. You keep yourself to the right, and you put the system to the left when addressing. So as you can see, it's cargo, birth, and delivered. The baby is born endowed. So there's your live birth record, and that's your birth certificate on the left-hand side. As you know, your mother or your father or the doctor nowadays is the informant who autographs an indictment that you have no paternal holder of your estate. Your mother autographs to establish that you are holder in due course of your estate. We taught the holder in due course over the last 2 weeks for those people doing bills of exchange. If you've missed the last 3 lessons, you've missed a huge part of what a huge amount of people are making errors with. So register signs your estate in the probate. Mother, I'm not going to actually go through the whole thing for you guys. Get the notes. Who's serious about learning this? This is going to be for you. So you can just see the estate trust. That's the trade name. And then the estate title, as you can see, it's your appellation. That, to put it in a nutshell, we go on about inalienable rights. I think a lot of people don't know what that means. A lien is to put a bond on something. So we have unalienable, which means you can't put a lien on the living man. But as you can see, they create us into fictions and they lien us and do all kinds of horrible things to us. So just to put the foreign situs trust and the sovereign trust. So you can see the created by the parent of a living soul when a given name is gifted in the law of the land at 18. You can claim the legal title over you. That's called sui juris. So you can see you're the equitable owner with users' equitable interest. I'm circling that one because we're going to be discussing that tonight. And then you've got the beneficial owner with ultimate controlling interest. So your person name is the debtor and your real name is the creditor. And you know we've been thrown into debtor status all day, all the time. It's relentless. So you can see the debtor, the trustee, the taxpayer, the resident, the voter, these are all the words. Limited residence, income, address. Then you look on the other side, it's creditor, executor, grantor, national, state nationals, that's what we all are who are emancipated, elector, unlimited abode, remuneration, and location. So there you are, a foreigner, a vessel trading on the sea, and on the other side, you're the sovereign, the man or woman born free. So now we'll talk about the title. The title has been claimed by the state under false presumptions, claim and contract, where your inherent right to title, potential holder of your sovereign estate, your potential holder, as you can see. So that's just a little thing that, I mean, I use those all the time when signing and reminding yourself of jurisdiction. We are not the enemy of public employees. We are their employers. We are the source of their job security, their pensions, their homes, and everything they own. We are the source of the credit they use in place of money. And we own the equitable titles, which are the real tangible titles and assets that they depend on. So when you talk about unalienable rights, folks, your rights are when you hold real title. So titles and rights are synonymous. So it's even the title to your name. You want to own it. And as we've all found out, you don't. And this is why we do that emancipation process. So we, the living people, are the actual owners of the gold and silver, the land, the cash, the corporate assets held in the global collateral accounts, the trust accounts. We are also the source and owners of the labor, asset resources, patents, trademarks, copyrights, performances, and intellectual assets. We own it all. We are done with evil. We are done with being bullied and misrepresented by our public employees. And we are definitely done with the disservice of the maritime commercial banks. Done, no more ever. Thanks, someone even added that for me who understood it. So now we're going to go into the trusts. I would love it if someone could remember I did an extensive one on the public trust with lots of diagrams in a past lesson last year. I thought of putting it in for the new people, but I've chosen just to actually get a glimpse of this. So these are the trusts that and how the system works. And as you can see, yes, there's a debtor to creditor system, but it's a front, because actually it's all about trust. So let's just have a quick little brief, because we're going to come back to this diagram just now. So here, the yellow circle is the system that you're living in now. And the blue circle is the South African Republic Trust, really. It's where all the assets sit. And then you've got this left-hand side in front of us, which is supposed to be the debtor, and the blue is supposed to be the creditor. But as you can see, what they do is they draw the center line down the middle, and they take the debtor side and they split the debtor and the creditor into the debtor side, because it's all straw man. And this is the big con. And this is why when you're doing bills of exchange as the debtor, you're stuck in the yellow circle, and you are creating our national debt to become larger and larger and larger. And this is for the people doing bills of exchange who need to go back to the drawing board if you're serious about it, and join our meetings like we did for the last 3. Try and get the notes so that you can get a basic understanding. If you see this line drawn down the middle, there's a little line going across, which is the upside down T account, the general, debtor, creditor. It's the ledger. So they put the whole ledger, debtor and creditor, on the debtor side. So we'll come back to this so I can explain how when you do bills of exchange, the rights process, and how everyone's been doing it wrong. And sorry, but there was something we heard the other night where someone's encouraging all these people of bills exchange to take the government to court. As Gift of Truth, we encourage no one to ever walk near one of those places. Stay out of them. If you're a mastermind at the court system, then yes, but you're not going to go in with anything other than being a trust. So 99.9% of people are not ready for taking any government office to court. It's the wrong information, and anybody who got that on the study group, please delete it if you can. You have been waylaid. So there you can see it's the debtor, and all these titles here. Title of the debtor is on the left-hand side there, and then there's the title to all the assets. But the assets are actually in the blue section in truth. So we're going to put them back in there anyway. We're going to revenue our assets. So all of us have been talking about trusts, but we have been talking about trusts only in a protection method for protecting assets. That was just a device for protecting assets, which is very important, of the debtor from the creditor attacking him. We want to put it into trusts, treating trusts not as a defense move, but solely as an offensive move. So as we've known from the whole system, don't argue, stand and know what you're doing, but you never argue. And when you accept things, you're the creditor generally. So we'll talk, we've done many lessons on honor and dishonor, and the whole system works through honor and dishonor. And as we know, our government that's set up now is a dishonorable body of, well, political structure of corporations. So let's just, this is for the people doing bills of exchange and the confusion around it. So I'm using this opportunity to actually explain a broad spectrum of the mistakes people are making. So I've been finding out that's what they have been coming at us with all along. It all just looks like a debtor-creditor because debtor-creditor and trust relationships are so closely related. They look similar on the surface. When you dig down into it, you will find out they are a little bit different. When you find out trusts are operating in a totally different world, in equity, and here we thought it was admiralty all along, which is nothing more than debtor-creditor. So you can see how deep this rabbit hole goes, but once you grasp this basic structure and your freedom has been, and you've done your voters roll and you've done it all, you actually mentally start gearing yourself up to be sovereign, because sovereign is actually a particular mental capacity before you can start doing anything else. So they were taking you into admiralty to force you into breach of contract. But really, there can't be any contract because there is actually no money. So there isn't a lawful contract at this position anyway. So you can't give a value for consideration. So under trusts, you don't have to give a value of anything. It's a thing. Whatever the thing is, the res, that is what is put into the trust. That's the principle. And that is the property. That alone should tell us something. That the fact that most of us were getting the debtor-creditor relationship is so closely related to the trust that you have to dig down a little bit. Plus, it operates solely in equity. We've given talks on equity and their images. We'll get to another one. I've decided I'm going to put an image of equity into each lesson so that we don't forget. And that is where the trust power is. It's in equity. Remember, trusts all work in equity. That was like the admiralty coming at you under debtor-creditor, which was operating and taking you into equity, and then for the enforcement. Then you got the breach of the duty under an equity, because equity is not compelling you to do the duty. So when you didn't do the duty, you wound up in jail or you owed a debt and they foreclosed on you. Down. So we're going back actually into common law of the land, which is the structures we work with, and we have equity, which is the remedy. So if things get out of control, we always have equity, and we will be setting up all the new court systems and everything into common law express trusts. So here is your little thing of, equality, everything on TV is just equality, the equality of man. You can see. It's not the same as equity, to be fair. We all have our differences, which is what makes us the same, and we all have different requirements. And someone who's running the show would look to each and every individual's requirements to get an equitable situation, just like you've got in front of you. So really, it is the same as the trust. What we thought was admiralty or debtor-creditor was really a trust. If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. We are talking about the actions of a trust. If it walks like a trust, talks like a trust, then it's a trust. That's the whole secret. No parties in the trust need to know they are forming a trust, including the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. That does not negate the fact that a trust was formed. So if the law recognizes a trust, then there is a trust. And half of you don't even know everything you're doing. Write down, I always use the cell phone contract. They've set up a trust and you're the trustee and you pay the bills because the trustee pays the bills. So as long as I have one of the following elements, these three elements is what makes up a trust. Your intent. So your declaration of intention is generally or basically the trust indenture. The purpose of the trust, and then the parties, and those are all the living people inside of a trust. Or specific res, then I have a trust. Those are the assets inside the trust. As long as I can prove that after I've made a claim, then I have standing. Listen to it for the people's bills of exchange. So as long as I can prove that there is a trust after I've made a claim, then I have standing to come in and make a claim as the beneficiary and say that the trustee didn't make a payment. So this is the trustees are the government officials, the government servants are supposed to be acting strictly in trustee position, and we sit in equity. So the man that was telling everybody to go into the Admiralty courts the way that he was doing it was shocking, because if you do end up being summoned to court, then you will set up a trust immediately in the court and you'll set the stage of you being the beneficiary, the trustee is the judge, and the clerk is the administrator. And you set up that trust within 1 minute in a courtroom and you stand in the beneficiary. That's when you know what you're doing if you get into a court. It is the best remedy to get through all court processes. Always establish yourself as the equitable owner of all the assets of the South African Republic while you're doing commerce under the Republic of South Africa. So as long as I can prove that after I've made a claim, then I have standing to come in and make a claim as the beneficiary and say that the trustee didn't make a payment. So when you've sent your bills of exchange and they haven't honored it. So once somebody's accepted or even rejecting the bill of exchange, a rejection of a bill of exchange bill of exchange means acceptance. So there is no rejecting it if you're the beneficiary, but nobody understands what they're doing and how the trust structure works. So when I prove that I have formed a trust, then I have prima facie case against the trustee. A court of equity assumes that the trustee is guilty. That's how it works. So the prima facie is an adjective sufficient to establish a fact or raise a presumption unless disproved or rebutted. So that's how the prima facie works. So that is exactly what they were doing when they took you from Admiralty into equity. The same thing happened there. The strength comes in equity where the court is going to assume the trustee is guilty, didn't make a payment, and the only way that the trustee can prove that he is innocent is that he has a record that he made a payment. So folks doing bills of exchange, I hope that has made you realize how the processes that you guys are doing, you're not following through properly. But there's also a process you're supposed to do before that. So we'll touch on that and we'll go into it deeper at another stage. So when you've sent your bills of exchange and they haven't made payment, they're guilty. And if they try to take you to court for making the payment, then you get summons into court, you set up that trust in a jiffy, you hopefully take your birth certificate, which is your estate. It is the court case. The court case is the trust that has been set up. So folks, a court case is a trust. So the only thing a court wants to know at that point, when are you going to make a payment? If you are not going to make a payment, then you are in contempt. This is where the power of the trust comes in. It is in equity. Here, all along, we are talking about a trust operating in equity with a different face marks, thinking it was a debtor creditor or an admiralty, while it was not. So they are tricking us to come under debtor creditor under the UCC, creating these negotiable instruments, thinking we are going to do a set-off or a discharge. We can move down. And there is no way possible. How does one get a remedy then? Even though the remedy is not in the debtor-creditor relationship, because it's not, or the secured party creditors, not that I'm saying you're not one, but it's not where the remedy lies. The remedy is in your trust, your estate trust, and it's about your position. I call it a constellation. So if you're in the wrong position in the constellation, you're going to see your butt. So the remedy is in trust, commerce through the trust. Now, when I was teaching trusts, and remember I kept saying, we are trustees in commerce. So that's basically, I've touched on what I call the corporation soul, which I think it's time that we go into it, and how the colonial government took over our country under the same structure that the tribes in our country have always run under for thousands of years. So this system, as we know, the UCC, which was the conversion of the law merchant, which is the law of merchant ships, is 8,000 years old, and it hasn't changed that much. So knowing who you are as grantor is the most important part. For example, if you are the grantor of the trust, or the beneficiary, or maybe the grantor and the trustee, then you've got different powers through the parties, whichever way you want to play it. So if you look at this and reverting to bills of exchange, reverting to our daily lives, this government was employed, and we pay them to be the trustees of our trust and to protect our assets and our rights. It's the only thing that they've actually been employed for, and they're our servants to our assets and trusts and in running them correctly. But a trust and the beneficiaries in the trust have to keep eye on the trustees, because they're your assets, and we haven't been doing that. We haven't been looking after our assets. We haven't been calling this government saying, hey, you can't just expropriate our land. The trust doesn't work that way. So it's because of our ignorance and our lack of knowledge. And as we say, we'll die from the lack of knowledge. So the key is whoever is the signer of the instrument that was the grantor, and the whole thing to begin with. So as I've said, the grantor sets up the trust. In our situation, we were born, and our mother basically granted it to government to be our so-called trustees, while they're playing beneficiary with us, which is not their correct position, as you were taught in the study group recently. You're not co-beneficiaries with the government. That's a bit confusing. So the key is whoever is the signer on the instrument, that was the grantor of the whole thing to begin with. So folks, all of you who make a signature on every daily document, you're the grantor, because you're granting these goods, but they're treating you as a trustee, because the trustee pays for everything. So we're signing it and paying it, and we're giving our titles away to the crown. So we've allowed ourselves to be robbed, to take away the victim complex, which isn't going to serve us right now. we've got to get all our strength up and say, hey, we've got you on check now. So that is where it all began. If you didn't express it to be a trust from the beginning, here it was a trust because there is no money. And everything has to be a trust. Didn't make sense. This is where it all began. If you didn't express it, your trust, to be a trust, that's why we haven't expressed the trust, so we're sitting in debtor and creditor. So we were supposed to express the trust from the beginning and claim our assets. But this is what we do when we become sui juris and of age, and we come back from being lost at sea, and everything that you guys know already, you've come back, you've claimed your assets, which makes you the grantor, and your beneficiaries have all rights to that, and you're the beneficiary and grantor, and government at this particular stage is the trustee, and you have to hold them accountable, and they must return all your goods. That's how it works. So you are forming a trust now, and the same way at the petrol station when you buy gas for a car, you are buying petrol, you are forming a trust. Everything today has to be a trust. We are forming hundreds of trusts a day, probably in some cases thousands. Are we treating them as trusts? Did we realize they were trusts? I don't think so. Now, if they give me an offer that comes in the mail in an electric bill, I'm going to treat it as a trust. It's an offer for a debtor or creditor relationship, only you don't know that it's a trust. So I'm going to express it as being a trust by forming the 4 elements necessary. I'm going to have intent, purpose, parties, and the specific res, which is the assets. And I'm going to turn that offer into the specific res, and I'm going to return it to them as the special deposits under the trust. I'm planting seeds. This has got to go deeper here. So this is interesting because all of this entire tribal structure and all of our clans getting put back into smaller enclaves that we can all live more community structured lives will be mostly done under that system. We're going to start the education to all our tribal brothers and sisters who, if you do in a half-an-hour lesson and they tell you how things were, they know a lot more than we do. And you must remember, it's still in their customs. They didn't write anything down, and that's why the purest language we have left on earth until Credo Mutwe wrote it down was Zulu. It's called a living language. English has become the language of the dead. And look how we all speak English amongst each other. They force us court cases in their language. They force us everything because of their spells and bounds. So we're going to have this musical, eclectic, different sounding musical languages from down the road when another clan lives down there. That's how we want to live, because if you look at the Tower of Babel story, it was the centralization of all the different groups of people and throwing them into a tower, trying to force them into one language and into centralization. And as we saw the tower fall, we watched the tower fall again for the last time. I'm not going to actually say I hope or I wish. I'm going to will it into our lives that this is the last time we are caught as foolish as we've been. So here we go. There's the master trust. This is just an image to show you. When you buy a car, you're forming a trust. When you buy a sailing boat, you're forming a trust. So you can see all your computers and all your little assets down to your toothbrush, you're forming a trust. So the structure over here, it's actually brilliant. It's not a bad system at all. It's just when we went to sleep, unfortunately, your trustees, you have to trust. And as we can see, we used to trust the government, which were not really trustworthy, so we've been duped. So it's time to move and shake and fire the trustees and replace them. And let's get people on the land to occupy the seats of the real private trust, which is the South African Republic. And we who have emancipated are the state nationals sitting in the public trust. But like America, we need to set up our assemblies all over. And it's happening in the tribal systems. It's where most of it's happening. A lot of people are just trying to hold on to their assets at this stage, but it's going to pay you to get involved on an assembly level. It's not time just to look after yourself anymore, folks. They're coming at us hard. We need to all stand together. And your communities are going to be paramount through this. You've got to be able to borrow sugar from your neighbor again. You've got to get communicating with your surroundings. It's like the first time I went to England, the closer people are in a flat next to a flat, the less they communicate. The closer we sit together, we don't have spaces around us. So we need space again. We need our gardens. We need to set up a more harmonious structure other than this treadmill corporate structure. Let's move down. That's an image to show you that every single thing is running under trusts. So if you look under the Black's 4th edition revised, it says under the definition of trust deposit, this is just to give you a briefing of what a trust deposit is. A trust deposit is for the purpose of the depositor to make a payment for an obligation or a debt or some other purpose. So there it's linked to the bills of exchange. So whatever the grantor wants to do, he really can do, as long as it's for a lawful means. Sorry. So I could use the deposit to pay a debt or an obligation. I could give the specific order to do conversion and convert the assets to, say, money, whatever their money is, and take care of the debt. The remedy is really not in debtor creditor. It is under trusts. We are really moving titles in trust. We are really moving titles. We are moving titles in trust. Remember, you're in a state, you've got a title. So that title moves within a trust situation. We are moving as vessels in the Admiralty communistic structures. So now I want to start, you've got to think about yourself as a moving title. And you must remember when you have your intention and you set up your trust, and there are all the different moving parties in a trust that have to function in harmony. And a trust actually set up correctly and without being with someone overseeing it and checking on it all the time is imperative. So my bond is my word, and my word is my bond. That's actually the truth. That's what a bond really is. And really, we are talking about a trust. It's a pledge, it's a duty, it's an obligation for a party, for the trustee to do whatever the will or the purpose of the grantor for the benefit of another party. That's third party. That's our government structure. So when they return the bills of exchange, you've got to actually get yourself in there as the beneficiary, and you have to hold the grantor, the trustee, accountable, because they're your assets, and you are writing off against your assets, and you can't even trust your trustee. You don't even know what the trustee is doing behind your back, which is why we sit here on Monday nights and learn what they're doing. So the third party could be another party, or it could even be the beneficiary or the grantor himself. So what I liken to a debtor creditor under the accepted for value under bills of exchange, it is talking about the alienability of the beneficiary's interest, not the assets. You guys who are doing bills of exchange under the debtor, you are, if you took that circle and divided it down the middle, sorry, Michelle, maybe we just go back to that image at the top. Now you could, another one down, so the two circles, sorry. I just want to go back on the bills of exchange. Okay, let's just have a quick look at this because I'm deeply concerned about you guys doing bills of exchange and listening to people corrupting your minds with taking you to court. So what you've done here, as we've said, that you've got the titles to the debt and you've got the title to the private side titles, the assets, but it's on they've put it all onto the one side and they've kept your secrets over there. So what you do as a bills of exchange, it's called a merger. Don't worry if you get confused. We will go into this on a deeper level. I'm just trying to set a stage for incorrectness. So what you need to do, the pink title, which is the debtor and creditor, the debtor side, and the blue side, which is the title to the assets, you want to merge those two. And you want to bring them up to your strawman account and deposit them back into the private side. There you are, the grantor and the beneficiary, and all that happens in this pale yellow side is then your trustee sits with that. So the private side in the yellow circle is holding titles to all the assets. The assets are the real tangible things are sitting in the blue circle. So when you do start doing discharges and things, you're discharging, you're not settling any debt. You're increasing the national debt by doing your discharge. So you're going to learn how to claim beneficiary stance from that private side, and you're never going to touch an asset. All those assets in that blue side, the government has usufruct to, and they have to pay interest. So all our assets sit there with interest. So you only ever discharge a bill based on the interest of your private side assets. So the assets never, ever move its value. The increase is in the interest, so you only ever pay in full from the interest side. If everybody did this process, the national debt would go overnight. Literally in a very short period of time, because we are the generators of all monies in the world, us living people. Sorry, we can go back down. That was just to explain what you're going to do, because you're going to take that pink circle and you're going to move it up into the strawman account so that you discharge your bills, but it's only based on the interest of the assets in the real assets of the South African Republic. So then the corporate government called RSA Inc. functions as a trustee in commerce strictly on behalf of the beneficiaries. So the right to transfer in general, the beneficial interests in a trust are freely alienable. That is a lien and a bond by the beneficiary. So we can put a lien and a bond on our beneficial interests of our assets in that blue circle. It's going to be, people are going to feel like you're in the washing machine. Don't worry, it will all suddenly, when your goods come out of the tumble dryer, it's all neatly ironed, ready to wear and ready to move. I lived in a washing machine for a year with this to gather it all up and fathom it. And the more action you do, the quicker you learn. So I ended up in this because of all the trouble against me and terrible, terrible psychopathy I have in my life. Someone attacking me who's a psychopath is the quickest way to learn, folks. But don't attract one of them because it's a living nightmare. So as we've explained, so you can put a lien and a bond on the interest of those assets. Sorry, got a little dog crying for my lap. So unless there is a valid provision to the contrary in the trust instrument, if there's any sign of, if there's a lien on something already, we don't know. Thus, a beneficiary, remember, we the people in South Africa are the living beneficiaries, under equity law, can assign, pledge, or encumber her interest, or even transfer all the interest that you've accumulated in trust for another. Also, if the interest is not conditioned on the beneficiary's survival, like we all know, we're on this, it will pass by will or by interstate succession. So, at the end of your debtor-creditor life, where these communists that I'm calling them, the big bosses, as you all know, the CEO of South Africa is Anton Rupert. The president of South Africa is Cyril Ramaphosa, and the chief whip is Julius Malema. Do we need to know more? So if we say Julius is standing up and he's doing this, he works for the British Crown and he's getting paid by them. So don't listen to any of the hogwash that he speaks. And he's sitting under one of those fraudulent trustees. So as we see, we can assign, we can pledge our interest to paying a bill. You can encumber the interest or even transfer it and add it into the savings on your credit side, on your asset side, as real money. So that's why when we do our copyright agreement, we say, okay, you're going to be fined 10 million rand, but when you pay it in silver because you're going to be paying it into my private trust. Now can you see how it works? So you can charge fiat currency, but when it comes to payment, they've got to convert it into the trusts accepts silver and real things. It doesn't accept fraudulent titles and statements. So the rationale is the beneficiaries are the equitable owners of the whole trust estate. And that's why I said earlier up there, we own the gold, we own the silver, we own the diamonds, we own the land, we own the state buildings, we own the trusts, we own the courtrooms. We own everything, folks. So in their trust, in their interests, the title of property, so the titles, in their interests, the titles are property, and each, therefore, has power to transfer and convey his or her interests into the trust to the same extent that she could transfer any other property. So transferee's right here is what's likened again to the accepted for value, return for value, but it's not actually that. And that's the transferee's right that I spoke of there. So titles equal beneficial interests of the third party beneficiary. A beneficiary can assign only such interest in the trust as he or she has. So you can't go donate someone else's car into your trust. That's all it's saying. But folks, like we've taught you, you don't own the titles. So initially I started to teach trust, and everybody got confused with the bill of exchange, and I thought, okay, let's wait for 6 months for people to go and run around in circles and stay in the washing machine. And when it starts failing, unfortunately, it was a half study. It wasn't done to its fullest for you to understand, and everybody in their desperate states could have taken safer processes like I've taught, like just reconvey your house into a title that you own, that the bank can't claim. Do things like set up a trust instantly and put a long let into your house that's bonded for 500 Rand a year and put a 20 or 30-year lease on it. The bank's not going to want to take it because they can't sell it with a 30-year lease. No one can. So there are much cleverer things to do than to do a discharge. And until you learn to do a set-off, you're causing more problems in the country by discharging bills. So as you know, titles are beneficial interests of the third-party beneficiary. A beneficiary can assign only such interest in the trust that he or it owns. So the transfer is not a transfer of the trust res, the assets itself, but only of an equitable interest. So say you've got a trust and there's a big farm and there are a whole lot of buildings on it, and the trustees let the whole farm out to different people, and they get a whole lot of rent in, and then they pay the bills. The equitable interest is what you get for the trust. Once it's had its annual thing, you earn beneficial interest. And you can say to the trustee, actually, no, I'm going to transfer my beneficial interest, because the farm did so well this year, back into the trust as gold or silver. So when you run a trust properly, it's a bank. Folks, I'm going to explain, once you've got a trust in the most basic, how to set up a small bank, because trouble is coming. And we're going to show you how to exchange, but without your community and without talking to your neighbor, you're not going to get very far. So it's very important that we set this up. And we're going to do some processes in the next 3 weeks where we're going to try and get band people together to go and start doing the, to start approaching municipalities and councils. We were doing very well on that. And I'm guilty of waylaying and bringing in the bills of exchange with thinking that I'd done 10 trust Zooms already. I thought people had the grip of it, but they generally don't. So we'll teach you the most basic again, but the trusts that we're going to be doing workshops on. Best way to run your life if you know how to run it. The most important thing is that it's the best way to learn to self-govern. Because if you build your trust up and you end up in court, it's going to be your fault because you haven't learned how to self-govern. And many people rather choose to be happy slaves under a tyrannical government. There are many that do, believe it or not. Because a lot of people are too lazy to govern themselves. Not easy, but I don't think we're going to have much of a choice. We can see from our electrical supply called Eskom, many people are self-governing their own power supplies. That's called self-governance. When you take the responsibility of directing electricity into your own home, in whatever form it is, you're taking responsibility for yourself. You can stand up and do service delivery, which is what all the SASSA children were bred to do. And those poor kids, those poor innocent youth in our country have been set up as a front for service deliveries to actually bring anarchy and revolutions and trouble to our country. So keep a watch out. And this is why it's so important to set up our tribal and really the fathers of our country, because those lost souls, we call the SASSA kids, I think there are more than 15 million of them, they're looking for their homes. They're looking for the patriarchs of our society. And as you can see, the whole woke movement and the whole American structure has been the demise and the decline and the beating of our masculine principles to the ground. And this is the death of that time that we're going through, and we're going to see the grand patriarchs of our world rising and calling the shots again. The men of honor. And let me tell you, there are thousands of paramount chiefs in our country that are the most honorable, wonderful people you'll ever meet. I kid you not. There is so much hope in this country. And remembering that the indigenous people on our land are the majority. And this is where South Africa is totally rare, because most other colonial countries, the native Indians, they were the minority. But still, we're sitting in a rather wonderful position. So anyone who can be of assistance to us, especially when it comes to donations, there's a lot of movement in and amongst our indigenous people, and us as natives. There's no ways in the fear that's been put into us of us being kicked off the land and kill the Boer. It's all Kabbalistic indoctrination, pre-planned. Ignore it all. It's a lot of nonsense. So the thing, which is the subject matter that is an action concerning an object or property rather than a person. It is the status of individual. That becomes the hot potato, whoever you give it to, this is your bill of exchange, or assign it to now as the hot potato. So once that trustee structure called RSA Inc. has got that bills of exchange in their hands, and you say you're the beneficiary, there's a thing called a letter rogatory. I'll plant a seed. It's when you appoint one of the officials as your trustee. Most people don't know what a letter rogatory is. I have many templates. I like using them. It's where you appoint someone or you extend your sovereignty to a court, or it's the same sort of thing. You always remain in honor with them. You don't fight. You just know the beneficiary's position is the strongest position, and the man who owns everything owns everything. The man who writes out the checks is the trustee, but on the instruction and only on behalf of the beneficiary. So once it's attached to the beneficiaries, the interest, I flip it. Flip the hot potato to the new assignee, and that hot potato transfers with it. And basically, that's your acceptable value. It's a trust, and it's hard to know and operate your bills of exchange under trusts. So for people who want to know more, there's a process that we're doing at the moment. We're going to perfect it, and we'll be putting it up as workshops. But as I've said to you all, I don't know if Rebecca's here tonight. We've asked the American state assemblies, because Anna von Reitz has put a bond on for the whole country so that people can discharge their bills of exchange. That would mean that the trustees are aware of their position by serving them notices, and the processes that we're in the process of doing now by putting a lien on all the assets of South Africa under that private trust, like I said, and the government can discharge our bills only on the interest of our assets that they get to use. They're supposed to be paying us rent for using our municipal assets. And they're stealing them and selling them to private corporations coming from the whole debtor credit system overseas, the money launderers, what are they called? The NGOs. My worst. So once it's attached to the beneficiary, the interest, flip it. Okay, we've said that. That is how we would treat something similar under trust, but it is likened to a debtor creditor. It comes into being able to make the claim that there is a trust. You have to prove that there is a trust. So what if the judge says, I don't see a trust here? You have to prove a trust. So that's if you end up in court for the bills of exchange, or anything for that matter, a bill, a parking ticket. You're going to express a trust in the courtroom. I've done a lesson, and it comes from Anna von Reitz, and it's marvelous. And it is in one of our past lessons, but I think it's worth revisiting because of the bills of exchange. So that was the door opening for you to drive the Mack truck through when the judge says that. So, you've got to prove a trust. That is an opportunity to prove the whole case so that there is a trust. So remembering what I said, the case is a trust. And they're looking for a beneficiary. They're looking for the beneficiary that they can discharge the bills from. So how am I going to prove that there is a trust? Remember what I said? The intention, the purpose, and the parties. So you're going to explain the intent and purposes is by the grantor. The grantor establishes a trust. So as you said, you set up the trust in the court because you're the grantor. So when the judge says to you, prove the trust, you can set up another one straight in front of him because you're the grantor of the trust and you hold the assets. So an express trust is a trust created in express terms and usually in writing, as distinguished from one inferred by the law, from the conduct or dealings of the parties, being all three, remember, donor, trustee, beneficiary. One, property is transferred by a person called a trustor, a settlor, or the grantor. Remember, I'm just giving you the dictionary explanation of the trust. So to transfer, so here, property is transferred by a person called a trustor, settlor, grantor, donor, to a transferee called the trustee. So you're going to see that transferee there is transferring all the assets by the donor to the trustee, who is the judge sitting behind the bench. So who holds the property for the benefit of one or more persons for beneficiary. So that's your government structure that they are infringing on. When you're in that courtroom, they claim to be a beneficiary. On average, a case in South Africa, an average case apparently runs into the millions. When they claim all these different, the bid bond and the surety bond and the indemnity bond, they make all these bond claims. The amount that you pay in the courts or the attorneys is what they can call a fart in the wind. It's very little. So here's your property. So you do it in the courtroom. And this is for any court case. It's not just bills of exchange. Because everything is running under trust. So when you go into the courtroom or you think of a court case next time, just see the position. The judge is the trustee. The clerk is the administrator who must just sign the bill after the trustees told her to do it. And you're the beneficiary that they must protect at all costs. At all costs. Otherwise, you fire the trustee. So it would be interesting to walk in and fire. You could fire, I suppose, you could fire a judge right there on the spot. I've never thought of it. So the trustee may distribute the property or the income from that property to the beneficiaries. He's allowed to discharge the bill or set it off. Express trusts are frequently used in common law jurisdictions as methods of wealth preservation or enhancement. That's the dictionary express. So the trust in the Black's Law Dictionary, 2nd edition, is a definition: an equitable or beneficial right or title to land or other property held for the beneficiary by another. We move up, down. By another person in whom resides the legal title or ownership, recognized and enforced by the courts of chancery, which is equity. So folks, you can see you are all operating on one side of a trust, and there's another side that is deep secret that I can tell you now the government is putting their dirty paws into that amount so radically. They're even selling our equitable land and property to foreigners right now. So then I've explained this before. They did it in Kenya, and you can see Kenya, the New World Order is setting up offices in Kenya right now. I heard the news last night. Quarter of the whole United Nations office from New York is moving into Kenya after the CIA spent 3 days with them last week. Decided. But what they did was they set up half of Kenya into 999 yulis, literally 50%, and that's all the best land in Kenya. And you know what a rich land that is. I got a message from a student in Kenya, and we just did it by pen, and she ended up taking it into court, and she managed to reduce all of the 99 ulises, the 999 ulises to 99 ulises. But I don't think the UN's, with what's going on in Africa, I can't see them hanging in there for very long. So it's all pretty simple. The parties is also simple. There are only 3 parties to the trust: the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. So since I'm the grantor making this out, signing everything, granting everything by my signature, all I have to do is define who the beneficiary is and who the trustee is. Then the specific res case trust, you can see that the case is the instrument of the trust, would be the actual offer itself or the case itself. What I would want, turn the offer into the trust res. So when your bill comes, that's the trust res. The bill you turn into the trust by claiming, by using the moving titles platform. Remember I showed you up at the top how you can merge titles and you can move them from that trust into another one, and then you allow this trust on the debtor side to use the interest and settle your debts therefrom. Never touching an asset. Because a good investor doesn't want to touch his assets. He wants the interest that he makes from the assets to be able to discharge and pay his expenses. He doesn't want to lose his house every month. So if there was not a title, I would have to create a title first. And because you're a donor and we're creators, we can create titles. Just like they can create a title from our estates, we can create our own title from our own estates. Claim that title, the one that you've created, then merge that, and 3, move that title if necessary if I wanted to terminate the case. That's what you can do. I will do it again with you. There's already a full case course I've dealt with of how to get through the courts. But I will relive it and bring it back because of the importance for you guys doing bills of exchange. So when you get in there and you want to defend even the debtor creditor side you've got the opportunity to go into court if they try and take your house to create a title there and then. So that's why you should all be doing your deed of reconveyance of anything that you own, from your car to everything. You can reconvey and create a new title. Or I could, number 4, come in and compel the trustee to do his duty. That's the process I choose. For the disbursement, if he didn't do it after I expressed and proved the trust in the first step. So when you go into court, you say, okay, folks, the court case sitting over there, that's my trust. You can walk in with your birth certificate because that's your estate. And the trust is the court document they've got trying to get you into jail or make you pay a bill, which is created from the birth certificate. So you want to do your birth certificate process. And that's what we're doing. And people doing bills of exchange without the birth certificate process are not going to get very far. No one's landed in any sort of big trouble other than your house being taken. And it's my objection for someone and convincing someone to save their house through the bills of exchange when you don't know what you're doing. You're going to lose it. So you're better off setting up a trust and getting a lease into that trust ASAP so that the banks won't easily take it. You can even do a lease with an offer to purchase, which means the title, and then you've created a title, and you don't have to transfer any property for 100 years if you don't want to transfer it. But it's a sole piece of property, so the bank can't take it. There are many better things to do than express trust for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. I mean, bills of exchange. Sorry, I'm harping on this one because of the study group last week horrified me. And there's nothing more dangerous than someone's got a lot of knowledge but not enough and not the right knowledge. So I've got the specific trust res as property. I'm putting it into special deposit. Once I put it into special deposit for the purpose of whatever I want to use it for, the beneficiary. So if I am the beneficiary and the grantor, then the trustee has the duty to say pay the obligation, which is nothing more than the same scenario on a mortgage. Everything is really operating the same way under trusts. Once we get the model down, we can put the model up and apply it to anything at all. Any kind of offer that comes into the mail, whether it be a summons, a charge for a bill, or whatever you want to call it. So you cannot claim against a bankrupt company. So our accepted value for value process is an insurance bond claim. It's done under insurance. So we want to put that bond in for all the assets of South Africa. So your reaffirmation of a private divine trust, I put a little template in here that you can play with, but most of all, the template's in here for you to kind of understand setting up your own trust. And that's not your express trust that you're going to, you have a family trust. As I said, when you buy a car, you've actually created a trust. So know how to put your car into your own trust that you create, which is what I started. And we were about to, this is the first lesson. And I had to cross over these 2 different trust forms because most people are thinking one thing, protection of your assets. But no, you are a moving title in a trust, which, you can be the debtor or the creditor, but I'm going to choose to be the creditor, which is the beneficiary. This government's got you moving title as the debtor. So you have now learned
that an estate, the dying baby estate, was created for you through deceit from this Setukivi estate, of which they create the Setuki trust from. The first secret trust, which is called a counter deed trust. And the Setuki trust was set up in secrecy. You who have emancipated have declared your claim to this trust. An example below to indicate that your name is a trust. I explained last week that you claim your name. Go down. Can we go down? Remember, I explained that you claim your trust value to your name as it is your business trust, but not just any business. Your business is operating as a trust. So what position are you in? Trustee, debtor. Beneficiary is the creditor and or the donor. So remember, the creditor is the donor. The realm estate, meaning the real estate, the realm of the estate, which is the realm that we pray, the realm falls under equity. So here's your publicity juris, the statement of truth in form and affidavit, authority. This is something you can use as a notice, and it's really the setting up of your trust. I love this document. You just got to know what to do with it, and you've got to research. So the statement of truth in form of an affidavit, because we don't do affidavits, we do truth statements. Authority of law in international foreign private law, providence of the creator of planet Earth. Non-statutory, without corporate state, government, without the corporate state, Inc. Dondo, an estate, remember, you're an estate, granted by the creator through private divine trust to me, John of the family Doe, for the benefit of all creation, for the purpose of ensuring all divine rights as are understood to be inherent conditions of human existence, an act of state, a reaffirmation of dual personhood, diplomatic arrival, that's when you free yourself up, declaration of individual sovereignty. Now, if you look at equality that they're pumping at us, that's removed your individuality, and this whole new thing of trying to take us down is to say we all have to have equality. And as you can see, that's not going to work for us. So this is under personal identification. I'm going to run through this quite fast. So be it known to all men and their persons that I am spirit, a non-resident alien. All of these words, folks, you've got to remember and keep this just for the words. It's a dictionary lesson. So that I am a spirit, a non-resident alien, tax is under resident, a sojourner means you have dominion over the earth, of the planetary family of woman and man, being in the world, not of the world, that's what Jesus said, residing within the vessel, which is my body, a fee simple estate granted by the Creator under private divine trust. So the first trust set up is the book of Genesis. It's a trust drawn up on the land, and the second trust created was the New Testament, which is in the name of Yeshua, you will be saved, which is his trust. So you become the body corporate, the body trust body, the body corpus it's called, is the body of people in the trust, and you move into the Yeshua trust, which is under the Christian structures. So it's just to show you how the two trusts, and if you look at them, one of the most fascinating books ever written on the Bible is called the Mirror Bible. And it's a South African man who wrote it. I see he's all over America and Russia. And basically he takes the New Testament and he calls it the Mirror Bible. And if you look at it, what did Jesus say? I didn't come to destroy the old. I've come to create the new. So this is the new earth, the new trust. And you can see he had to do this. It's I'll recommend a video to you to learn it all. And the setting up of these trusts, which you'll see how the Zionists captured them. So it says in my free simple estate granted by the Creator under private divine trust. My name is man, commonly known as John. You see, my name is man. And I'm going to say when the new earth is created, which is what we're moving into, we're going to take that, and man is our species, really, with a capital letter M. That's where I say we're going. So my name is man, and I'm commonly known as John, trustee or whatever you are of the estate. But now you're making yourself trustee of your living body, because this is you as a trustee. So you are in charge of this living body, of the estate granted to me by the living Creator. Also, no, that's him as the donor creator, known as John Doe. Here comes your capital letter name. So you created the actor, and you can hire him out on the acting fees, which is your copyright. One of my external expressions and fictitious externalities, because I'm a creator, I can create anything I want with my own self. In the personal theater of my life and social involvement, by international common law recording, being of the age of majority, complete in my faculties, a natural-born divine creation, a private sentient, civilian, absolute sovereign natural person. Natural person I used here because in their system, they will record a trust and say that the trustee is a natural person, for instance. That would see in their system a living man. A sovereign micronation and a peaceful inhabitant. You're not a resident of the earth. You're an inhabitant, the sojourner of planet Earth, greater than the constitutional or monarchical public survey boundaries of any form of fictional enclosure. That's where we're demolishing all their territorial boundaries under Google Earth maps. I think they've got a map of each one of us, like the inscriptions and those drawings of the divine trusts and buildings that they build according to our bodies. So we do solemnly make this reaffirmation of dual personhood, pursuant to my absolute freedom as spirit embodied, as established by virtue of my presence incarnate and sojourner of planet Earth, with reservation of all divinely created and established inherent unalienable rights and privileges. So it is at the same time that I renounce and declare void, ab initio, any and all attempts by any de facto corporate entity by means of fictions, which means this government, or otherwise to change my lawful sovereign natural personhood status to that of a corporate, statutory, military, maritime, admiralty, fictitious person, consumer, individual, citizen, subject, plaintiff, defendant, resident, whoever, non-taxpayer, as a driver, gun, firearm owner, creditor, debtor, that covers all your positions of your res in your trust. Subject to the seizure of alien properties by any hypothecated corporate, legislative, military, maritime, admiralty, fictitious authority. You could use this template to discharge your bill and establish the trust via this way, because this is the announcement and establishment of your trust, which is your moving title trust. This active state with its instrumentality rule serves as notice upon judicial, presidential, or otherwise, that or acting as corporate officers, whether by color of law or color of official right, are acting or have acted without the usual immunities afforded in lawful civil judicial proceedings. So such government has created a fictitious legal person about myself, like a movie. They've written a book about you, and they've claimed to be the author, identified as John Doe, the legal person to use in trade and commerce without my permission. However, the use is hereby redetermined at my sole discretion not the imagined or personal discretion of any government or organization, and now requiring payment to me of any usage, storage, reference, or holding. So government has to pay you interest. That's where all your payments of your services come from, are the interests of your asset holdings that you let government use. That's our public holdings. That's our private-public trust. So here in this notice is the rights held back by from any government for the peace and safety of all corporate officers, etc., as well as myself. I have identified all my guaranteed absolute rights as being those identified in the Heavens Society Declaration of Self-Determination, whatever that's my name for my Heaven Private Contract Society of Self-Determination, to which I am a high contracting party, these being restrained from said corporate officers. So you're removing yourself from them as any form of claim of beneficiary or donor, and you're putting them straight back into the position of what you pay them for every month to do. So until such time as the present de facto corporate government, we're saying we're holding all our assets until someone decent comes in and takes position, or we vote a new position in a whole new system, which is what we're busy doing. Government can make the necessary changes to its structure to ensure said rights. These identifications and presentments will list the international record, serial number, postal number, social security, driver's license. You see, it's all those titles. All of those titles that they claim, you're claiming back and you're putting them into trust. Having been recognized, received, recorded, and issued by the de facto corporate government. This birth certificate number, there's your date of birth in there, is the international recording, registration, in national authentication, state certification of a public document of the New Earth Nation. That's just my, as I said, my nations and my personhood. Global citizenships, as well as identification of all guaranteed absolute properties, whether private or public, that are and have been in lawful possession of myself. We possess the land they claim to own. And possession is 9/10 of the law, but this 1/10 of the law is what you have to do here. And this is what we're doing. So any confiscation or seizure of any kind, any guarantees, absolute private and public properties by any de facto corporate officers, etc., will result in damages of 50,000 or 50 million rand required from the corporate state, Inc., which is a national state, to be paid in silver or gold. So we wanted to go into that private side of the trust. This includes also seizures of government property. That includes seizures of our government property to be multiplied by not only the damaging parties, with all those in concert and any causes of action. I am the only collateral judge in my own affairs and rights, given to none other. There you go. So here's your declaration of the private divine trust. You can go through it when you get your notes, and this is a template that all of you can start fiddling around with and adding. And don't write template for template, please, folks. But definitely do it with the status correction. But remember, you're claiming to be a creator on this document, so be a creator. So this private divine, so this document I'm sharing here is your trust indenture of the moving title, so that you can actually stand as beneficiary and remind yourself thereof and use your document, whoever questions or queries you. I use my individual emancipation documents. Most people don't know how to even use them, so I would go back to my full status correction and go through each document. Every time you learn something here, you will see you've already done it, but you don't function in it yet because you don't have the knowledge. And this is what we're doing now. We're filling in all the understanding of your documents that you've already processed. And then you're going to start adding extra processes on it while you become the moving title in the res of the trust. Says made in absolute by public notice, any certified copy is of its own absolute jurisdiction, being self-actuating and self-determined. You see, this is your self-determining trust. This act of state is established by the Creator and myself, which means God and yourself, in absolute sovereignty, and is made final, adopted, and accepted by the doctrines of estoppel, by acquiescence. That's our administrative process from Zoom 5. The law of the record, that's your authentication of your birth certificate, which we will start next week. I will give you a small lesson. I highly recommend that everyone starts making application. Even if you wait for 2 years for your birth certificate, you've started. I suppose you could use the application against them as well, because it takes so long to get one. So the doctrines of estoppel by acquiescence, the law of the record, that's the authentication process. It's not as difficult as everyone thinks it is, just getting the birth certificate. Your moral obligation, your preemptory mandamus, that's another process. Declarations and divine law upon the passing of a customary and reasonable time of 10 consecutive calendar days from the receipt of service. So this you are sending to different departments for them to rebut. And they won't be able to, because you've caught them red-handed. You don't even necessarily want them to answer, because you have them under a default judgment when they don't answer. So this document is complete. This is my full trust. It will be the absolute ministerial duty. And then you can add in the president's, prime minister's name of the former governing nation. You can send it. I've spoken about this before. The registrar, you have an acting registrar and a registrar. What I have found out, that the people playing dual roles, I think there's 6 or 7 in a country. Sorry. They've actually had to emancipate to be able to function in that position. So I don't think that those people holding 2 positions
Shaka, can you just double check and see if Karen is still on the Zoom? I think the load has just swapped over. I'm just quickly going to have a look and see where we are. We're nearly at the end of the session, and
Karen is still showing as been there, but
okay.
maybe her network is sporadic.
Yes, I think the load shedding just switched over now, so I think her system is probably just doing a reconnection of some sort. So apologies to everybody for a little bit of a delay. I think if we can just ask everybody in the meantime with the Q&As, if you'd like to just prepare, we are coming up towards the end of the presentation. I think we've got about another half a page. If I'm having a look here, yes, it's really tiny, only a little bit left over. So if we can just ask you to prepare your questions so we can get ready for Q&As. And by the sounds of it, it does sound like Karen is wishing for this presentation document to be shared, which we will do so tonight. It looks like there was only one typing error in there, so not much needs to be changed. We could actually share it. Sharka is just double checking with Karen, and it does seem as if it is
going through. It's not going through. The call isn't going. Oh, here we are. She's coming into the room.
There we go. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. There we go. Hello. Sorry,
we have these great interruptions. I think it's actually global right now. Everyone's having power cuts.
Yes. Okay. There we go, Karen. Off you go. We've just asked everybody to prepare for questions.
I'm finished. I didn't realize how long I've been on this. It's actually a much longer lesson than I thought.
It is, but we're nearly done. Thank you.
So we to identify, restore, and correct any and all errors, injuries, wrongs, and damages at any time applied or attached to me, with or without my knowledge, or any fictional characterizations about myself. Either reserve the right to redefine, reverse, alter, add, to amend, reorganize, redeclare, and change this act of state at any time or place I should so desire. My externalities, that which is an extension of myself, made in declarations, in contracts, in invisible contracts, assumptions, and presentments about economic liberty. Move down. My research and development of my rights are not limited to any other restrictions and remain under my sole control. So here we go, the spiritual announcement of my diplomatic arrival to the providence of the Creator. So there you are, it's a lovely little doc. Put your right thumbprint there. The act of state is retroactive to my birth, absolute to my own discretion. You couldn't be more sovereign than the statement in this document. The providence of the Creator of planet Earth. There we go. Just go down. I think we finished. Yeah. So there's all is. I just haven't put your addresses. I highly recommend, if you're going to use it in the public and you're going to start sending this document, I would highly recommend that you use a public notary for this. There's a huge confusion about public notaries. I've had so many documents notarized, maybe up to 30 already, and I've only ever paid once. And one was a full land claim with gold stickers and ribbons and seals, and most of them look at the documents and said, oh, can I come to the next lesson? I want to learn this. That's what I've had received from notaries in this country so far. But when we're doing our private recording in our land recording office, which is kind of up and running, we're new early days, and we're feeling our way through it. I've recorded my stuff in there, so we're still sampling. Folks, it takes a little while, and we don't have many people giving us donations, so we're doing this on the smell of an oil rag at this stage. So we'd love some help and donations, and anyone who wants to assist. And the most amazing thing you could assist in right now is, guys, send notices to everywhere you can. There's a very fascinating thing going on, which I would have loved to have shared tonight, and it's going on in America. And I logged into it about 2 years ago as a brilliant concept, and I introduced it so that we could all get together and send notices and bonds to the municipalities. But the average people were not geared for it yet. I will proudly say that our tribes are going to be doing it pretty soon, but we need all of us to do it. So we will let you know in the week to set up something that we can start moving in groups. You'll find even your bills of exchange and all of this will fall into these processes where you act rather with more than one person per people. So folks, thanks very much. I think it was probably a little complex for a lot of people, but get the notes and it's your study. And as I've shown you, I try and deliver a template each week, and they're valuable ones. As you guys know, I have done lots of processes, lots of courts, lots of fighting environmental people. I have been had up by gee whiz, I was attacked by 4 major government offers, all coming at me at once, trying to get me into court under criminal investigation of non-compliance. That's my best. 3 courts threw it out after I'd done my documents, because you stand on the ground that you're standing on. So the best is to actually do 2 processes, but I didn't start off with bills of exchange. I can tell you that now. When it comes to the money, if you should all know them by now. They're trying to get every last cent. So be careful when you start using in the financial area. Right now, you should be standing and creating your rights, creating your little trusts and all that sort of thing. And if you go back on the Zooms the whole of last year, there is a feast of stuff in there. But because we've got so many new people on, we're kind of going to start not at emancipation again, but we're running through this. And as I said, I think there are 12 trust lessons already on documents. So thanks, everyone. I hope it wasn't too complex, but fire questions so that you can, and don't, as they say, to ask, the asking means the king asks questions. So when you go into court and you do bills of exchange, you're defending yourself for anything, you must be the one asking the questions, because you're the king in the court when you know you've set up your trust. Thanks.